Welcome to First Draft, Second Pass, a video series where we look at films that feel like a first draft and give them a second pass. My name is Will, and today we'll be looking at the 2003 romantic comedy ensemble film Love Actually. So this is one of those movies that gets it right more than it gets it wrong, and if I'm being honest, doesn't actually fit into the outline of this series. Love Actually does not feel like a first draft. It's a well-crafted film with a clear narrative, charming characters, and it overall succeeds at its goal. But there is one thing it does not get correct, and that's its own subject matter: love. For the most part, I believe that a movie's first and foremost responsibility to its audience is to entertain. Its second biggest responsibility is to provide escape, and only then should a film attempt its third responsibility: teaching their audience. So if you're the type of person who dislikes movies that try to tell people how to behave, then you will probably disagree with what I end up saying. Or you probably already dislike Love Actually because of its sentimentality and its audacious claim that Christmas is about something more than a capitalistic responsibility to economic growth. But I feel like with a title like Love Actually, it should at the very least make an attempt to create a good example of what love actually is. Enough of this movie's whopping 9 storylines and roughly 26 individual relationships, I would say that only 2 come close to showing what real actual love is, and only one relationship of those 26 actually feels healthy. Since the individual plots have very minor connections to each other and for the most part are unrelated, I'm going to tackle each character story in one fell sweep. There are 9 different plots, 7 of which have the same formula. 1 or 2 people have a romantic or romantic adjacent feelings for another person, they do something that alerts the other individual that they have those feelings, and those feelings are either rejected or reciprocated. The exceptions being Liam Neeson's character and his son Sam, though this one does contain the formula. It's really more about a father-son relationship. The other is Bill Nighy and his manager. Hugh Grant plays the Prime Minister of the UK who falls in love with Natalie, a constantly fat-shamed member of his staff.
I think there's a pretty sizable ass there, yes sir. Huge thighs.
He immediately takes a liking to her because she's charming, likable, and pretty. Things are complicated by the fact that he's the most powerful man in the country and she makes him tea for minimum wage. So instead of him just being an adult and recognizing that he can find a person attractive and charming and that doesn't require any action or deterrent because he is a grown-ass man who is also the prime minister and should be able to not act inappropriately because women aren't responsible for your reaction to them, he unfortunately decides to use his power and position to uproot her life and have her transferred because ultimately he believes he is not responsible for his own emotions. Also, there's like this weird moment where she basically is sexually assaulted by the US president, which is not a great look for America, but one we've absolutely earned, that inspires the prime minister to make a speech rejecting normalcy and calling the US out for their bullshit. Which is a good moment for the prime minister, but it's a moment that uses sexual assault to give a man a win. So, not a great moment for women. On top of that, from Natalie's perspective, it seems like she got fired because she let the president sexually assault her, which is super fucked up. Eventually, Hugh Grant realizes his feelings for her and goes door to door looking for her, which is basically what every other male character is doing at this precise moment. Anyways, they end up making out backstage at a children's play. Colin Firth's character discovers his girlfriend is cheating on him with his brother in a rather hilarious way.
Hurry up, big boy! I'm naked and I want you at least twice before Jamie gets home.
And he does what we all do when we're dumped and humiliated: spend a month away in a villa in France. At the villa, he gets a new housekeeper who doesn't speak or understand English, and not soon after, Colin Firth discovers that he's in love with her when she strips all of her clothes off in front of him. So this scene completely highlights the imbalance between the power structure of these two characters. She makes a mistake at work and is desperately clinging to her job and worried that she's going to be fired, and Colin is having a lovely meet-cute. So after their fun and flirty time at the French villa where Colin Firth's character is paying her to be there, they go their separate ways for Christmas. And for some reason, Colin Firth decides that he has to tell her he likes her straight away, and not only that he's going to marry a woman that he's technically never spoken to. And instead of just, speaking with her privately about it or going on a few dates first, he storms over to her house and asks for her hand in marriage at her second job. This is another great moment for highlighting the class discrepancies in this relationship, as he's flying around Europe and she's working multiple jobs on Christmas. She says yes, which is one heck of a rebound for Colin. Finally, we have a situation where 2 people working together are on the same level and who over the course of the film get to know each other and decide they would like to date. It's simple and uncomplicated and really is only in the film because they are simulating sex the entire time. So either this is the most expensive pornographic film of all time, or there's a really obsessive director of photography who spent 5 weeks lighting a sex scene. Emma Thompson is married to Alan Rickman, a marketing something or other. Their seemingly uninteresting lives are complicated by the fact that a very young and very pretty what's-her-name wants to do Alan Rickman, which is, at the very least, odd. I'm not trying to kink shame here, but I am noticing a pattern between these ages. Alan ends up trying to buy what's-her-name a locket, and despite Mr. Bean's attempts to black, gives it to her for Christmas. But by then, Emma had already seen the gift and realized that he had bought it for somebody else. Later, she lets him know that the jig is up. And I don't really have any jokes about this because in a movie that more or less is the most fantastical rom-com of all time, for some reason it decides that not everyone deserves a happy Christmas. And it is a stone-cold bummer. Peter is marrying Keira Knightley at the start of our film with best friend Rick Grimes in the wings. Things become complicated when Keira Knightley discovers that the guy who's constantly filming her and rude to her all the time is actually infatuated with her, playground style. What follows is possibly the most famous and memorable moment of this film when Rick Grimes confesses his completely inappropriate crush in a completely inappropriate way, and at the end he's rewarded as if he's done something very noble. Working for Alan is the ever-charming Laura Linney, who has a big girl crush on Carl, the resident hunky graphic designer. Alan tells Laura that she should
invite him out for a drink, and then after about 20 minutes, casually drop into the conversation the fact that you'd like to marry him and have lots of sex and babies.
You know that?
which in most movies would be the most inappropriate thing for a boss to say, but this is Love Actually, so...
It's fine. You could have said f*** and then we'd have been in real trouble.
Thank you, sir.
Laura is finally able to get with Carl and things are going swell until we discover that Laura's got another man on the side. Carl, devastated to be manipulated by the woman he desires, puts an end to their relationship, which is the right thing to do, except for 10 seconds later he discovers that the man on the other side isn't a romantic relationship, but rather her brother, who she's been charged and taken care of, and instead of just being a grown-up and saying that's okay, we'll meet up at another time, he acts like not getting some from a lady he likes is the same as her cheating on him. Liam Neeson's wife has recently died, leaving him as the sole parent to his stepson, Sam. Liam feels like Sam is retreating because of this, but he is delighted to discover that he's actually sad because he's in love with a classmate who is leaving town. He then spends the majority of the film giving little Sam some of the least productive advice on dating. Upon discovering that Sam's crush is a musician, Sam quickly picks up the drums as a way to impress her. When that doesn't go as planned, Sam, with the encouragement of his stepdad, runs through a post-9/11 airport to confess his feelings to a classmate. He is then rewarded for acting like an absolute lunatic by somebody probably too young to realize how dangerous this kind of behavior is. So the film actually opens with Bill Nighy's character recording a Christmas cover of the Trog song Love Is All Around in a blatant cash grab attempt to remain culturally relevant. Bill basically bullies the people of the UK into making his song a hit in his various public appearances, and for the most part gets what he wants by the sheer power of his own charisma, and it's genuinely fun to watch. In the end, he has won the Great Christmas Song-Off, and instead of celebrating with all of his rock and roll friends, he decides to spend Christmas with his employee. Which is a pretty uncomfortable thing to do, but honestly, if not for this line...
Come on, let's get pissed and watch porn.
It's mostly sweet. And lastly, we have Colin, the slacker horn dog who wants nothing more than have some good old-fashioned Christmas sex. So in a depiction of American Midwest culture that is as accurate as it is inaccurate and both a compliment and an insult, Colin heads to Wisconsin to get exactly that. And honestly, good for Colin. This film features not one, but 4 mostly inappropriate employer-employee relationships. It confuses lust and infatuation for love. The film is mostly obsessed with sex. People having it, people not having it, people trying to get it, and people talking about it. So honestly, there's nothing really wrong with the setup of all of these characters. The issue mostly lies in their conclusions, how the film either punishes or rewards the behavior of the characters. I found that almost every instance of bad behavior of men was rewarded and good behavior of women was punished. Well, a few women who weren't having things just happen to them. Actually, this story is completely fine. So Colin's story is okay. It's stupid and maybe a bit sexist, but it's played off as pretty unrealistic. Plus, he's not tricking any of these women, and none of them are employed by him or dating his best friend. So, yeah. It's not love, but it's a healthy depiction and basically the gold standard for consent and not reading into things. The joke is that they are pretending to have sex with each other, and yet John doesn't take Judy's professionalism as an indicator of interest, but rather he's able to divorce what she is doing for her job from what she may be feeling. So when he does finally ask her out, it's under the assumption that he's not owed this, and that she may in fact say no. Rick Grimes has been treating his best friend's wife like crap for years in a weird attempt to keep his true feelings hidden. But then he confesses everything in a romantic Christmas Eve performance piece, and in doing so, he's basically asked Keira Knightley to lie to her husband about all of it. She then kisses him, which really sends some mixed messages. So here's how we fix it. Instead of a live presentation, he tapes it. He plans to explain his feelings for her in a tape, but when he shows up, he sees Peter first. And in that moment, realizes the mistake he's made and destroys the tape. So I feel like that's the conclusion the filmmakers wanted him to come to when he says,
Enough. Enough now.
But he gets there after his romantic Hail Mary ends in probably the best way possible, which really, again, sends the wrong message. So honestly, the fix is easy for this one. She says no. So throughout the film, they keep speaking to each other in different languages, and while they don't understand each other, what they are saying is echoing what the other is thinking.
I really must do copies.
It's my favorite time of day. Driving you.
É parte mais triste do meu dia. Deixá-lo.
But in our version, it's revealed that what she was saying was just imagined by Colin Firth's character, and what she was actually saying was something completely different.
It's my favorite time of day. Driving you.
É parte mais triste do meu dia.
It's not like the original movie is against giving characters crappy endings, which brings me to... So I don't understand why this movie doesn't let some characters into the fantasy rom-com world it's creating. It seems odd that so many characters who mostly act selfishly or inappropriately get a big romantic, charming, fun-filled, flirty time, and the characters who have given their lives for others are denied that fun time. So instead of having Laura Linney end the movie spending Christmas alone with her brother, Carl shows up, apologizes for being a complete fool for walking away from the perfect woman, and Laura Linney then gets the happy ending she deserves, and Colin Firth doesn't. So I do feel bad for Colin Firth for getting cheated on, but this is a rebound, dude. Deal with your emotions like an adult, regain control back into your life, and stop trying to make this joke a reality. So Laura Linney gets the sex, and Colin Firth gets the pond. I think a good fix is to change this moment here, when the curtain rises. We'll have Hugh Grant push Natalie back into the wings to keep her from being seen and thus avoiding a scandal. So this will highlight Hugh Grant's more selfish self-preservation tendencies to Natalie. I'm not trying to destroy their relationship, I just want Natalie to be more aware of what she's getting into. I know this kind of makes this ending a little bit less romantic and satisfying, but honestly, he's got to be called out for some of his crap.
Yeah.
So Liam Neeson will realize that he's put in the wrong ideas of love into his son and that he should really help him focus on just being a kid and dealing with the loss of his mother. What's that? You want to know why he realizes this? Maybe because his son wants to run through an airport to try and kiss a girl and he's only like 10 years old and doing such an illegal thing could cause a lot of hardship for them in the future, and that just because she didn't immediately fall in love with him now doesn't mean that she won't in the future. They're just 10 years old. So Emma Thompson's character unequivocally gets the shaft at the end of the movie. She discovers her husband has been having an emotional affair and just has to live with it. Like Laura Linney's character, she's made her life around caring for other people and supporting them, and in the end she gets burned for it, which is bullshit. So it feels unnecessarily unfair and is a weird time for the movie to break the fantasy world that everyone else is living in. So here's the change. After Emma Thompson's character confronts Alan Rickman about him having an emotional affair, he mentions that there was one gift that he forgot. He then pulls out the necklace and gives it to her, having always intended to give it to her, but just didn't want to in front of the kids. Or something. I debated with finding a way to both punish Alan Rickman's character and reward Emma Thompson's character, but I realized the best thing to do is to lean less into reality and more into the feel-good fantasy world that every other character is already living in. So in the end, Alan Rickman is not a saint, and he's not a hero, but he's not so much of a bad guy, and at least it's a step in the right direction towards mending the relationship, and a better ending than the original, which is basically the emotional equivalent of a sad trombone sound. So I know this episode is just slightly different than what I would normally do and has swerved oh so slightly into liberal bias gender role propaganda. And you can go ahead and accuse me of being a bit of a Scrooge for tearing down a movie that is almost exclusively defined by its feel-goodedness. And honestly, that would all be a fair criticism. Most people will probably like the original version of this movie more than they would like mine. And maybe all we can and should expect from movies is a few laughs and charming characters to pass the time in between drinking eggnog and avoiding making that one Zoom call to grandma you've been putting off all day. But I don't know. Maybe if some movies actually tried to make the world a better place, then you wouldn't cling to them so desperately for escape. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. A special thank you to our wonderful Patreon supporters. If you like these videos, please consider becoming a patron. Also, be sure to check out our podcast, Movies with My Best Friend Phil. First Draft, Second Pass is a production of Mumble and Shrug Productions.